Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 46 of ZK Live. We're going to be interviewing Josh Linder from Evolve Residential. Evolve Residential is a interior design firm based out of Boston. We're going to just get right into it. Josh is coming on, and we're going to be talking to him about all things design, how he got into the business. I'm going to invite you now, Josh. Hello, sir.
Hello, hello. What's happening?
Not much. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. This is you should know this is my first Instagram live video. So everyone, thank you for being part of that.
Awesome. It's This is my 46th episode now.
All right.
My mug in front of the camera has just become second nature.
Mhm. Yeah. So you're very used to it. So definitely going to take your lead, and yeah, I'm happy to join in and share, and hopefully, give some people some helpful information, insight, ideas. Yeah, whatever I can.
Yeah, you're we got to work together on a project. I've been very impressed with your design aesthetic, and I want to hear about how you got here, what influenced it. Let's just get into your story. How'd you get started?
So I started as an artist, as an illustrator, and that kind of like informs a lot of what I do because I really like to bring a sense of like creativity and challenge to every single project that I do. And so one of the things that I think is unique to us as a design firm is that we don't really have a particular aesthetic, and I don't really like gravitate towards a particular style. I think you'll see a lot of common threads through a lot of our work, but I kind of almost view it as like each project I'm a set director, and each project is a different stage set for a different type movie. Like maybe I'm doing a sci-fi movie, and then maybe I'm doing a western. But I kind of like that challenge of being able to dabble in all different styles and kind of combine them in interesting ways. And I think that sort of like bringing that like artistry to each project is really important to me. And that's like something I really pride myself, like coming from like the art school background and kind of like initially struggling with, how do I turn my creativity into a career? Sort of like meandered and found my way here, and it's something I really love doing. So yeah, there's like the 30-second version.
That's awesome. I was just talking to a friend of mine, Jessica Allred, and she said, "Man, I really love stuff. It seems to be so daring." And I was like, "That's a great word. I don't know your stuff as well as you do, obviously, but what you just kind of described of the challenge of it, and I think, would you agree that it's daring, some of your design?"
Yeah, I think daring, I like to think of it as like fearless, because that's something that comes to mind, and something that it's like a conversation that I have with a lot of clients because everyone's point of challenge is at a different point, and with some people, to have one pink pillow on a sofa and a white interior is like going crazy for them. But some people, like we have other clients where we specifically have this client that we've worked with. We've done like 7 projects with her now. She's an amazing client. She's such an inspiration. But the first time we got together, she said, "I want a riot of color," and we were like, "Okay, let's do it." And so like, how do we make that tasteful and fun, but also still like approachable and comfortable, and so it doesn't feel like, the last thing that I want any of our clients to feel is that like feeling of like, "Ooh, let me get a coaster before you put a drink down." Like, everything is like meant to be used at the end of the day. Like, yeah, it's supposed to be beautiful in design, but it's also supposed to be like relaxed and enjoyable and really feel like home. And so, so I'm always like like kind of like finding that point where people are kind of like a little uncomfortable, and when they're there, like it means we're getting to a good place.
Yeah, yeah. That's Otherwise they could just go to Pinterest and copy something they saw, and what do they need you for?
Exactly. Or just like, walk into Crate and Barrel and just like pick out a room and be done. And so, how do we, in addition to sort of like finding that specific, like that, like pushing the boundary for them a little bit, the other thing I think is really important is like finding like how do we make the space about our client? Like how do we pull out like their personality and like points of interest? And it's like that's another big challenge because you know, a lot of times people there's a lot of fear around like revealing parts of themselves in their decor, but sometimes you know those are the best moments in a house. Like you know we've worked on a project where you know I like stumbled upon this like old like Matchbox collection, and I was like, oh my god, we're making like a shadow box and we're gonna like set these all up, and it's like such a good conversation starter. And like another great example is I work with somebody, they did a lot of like amateur photography in college and had this like entire box full of really cool black and white images, and he kind of was feeling like, you know, I don't really know if like any of these are like so great that I want to present them as like a master shot. But you know, through a little, you know, encouragement, kind of like got his head around the ideas that like if we created this whole gallery space that was filled with a lot of these images, and you know none of them were overly large, that it just became about, you know, that about it being an expression of him and something really personal. And also it's just like a great way that you can have conversations with your guests. And you know, it's like you're gonna kind of love those moments when people are like, you know, like, oh, you know, and a lot of these images were shots of himself, but you know, from when he was like much younger. And so people will see the images, and I've been there when they're like, wait a minute, is that you? And then so it just is like, it's like such, it's so great when people can like walk through your space and kind of get to know you, and not just like walk through the space and say, oh wow, you spent a lot of money. Like, you know, you spent a lot of money, who cares? You know, I think it's really like the homier it is, the more interesting it is, the more it really reflects you, like your like hidden interests, your like the parts that sort of like make you special and unique, for like, you know, when you're sharing with guests, but also as you're kind of like, you know, like walking around your space and kind of reminded of things that you love and like that bring you joy.
Yeah, it is interesting when you see design at a high level with an expert like you. It's so much more than just the superficial, like this goes here
Yeah.
and color goes with that color.
Yes.
I think to most people, like to a lay person like me, like that's just kind of how it goes. Like people like, what paint color should we use? Like, you know, what color should the couch be? And what I'm hearing and what I see with good design is it's so much more than that. And that's why I'm so impressed every time I see it. Um, you know, because it feels homey but like thought out. I don't know. I'm a big fan.
Well, thank you. No, I appreciate that. I think like you know, it's been great teaming up together because you know I really have appreciated seeing your skill set and like the precision that you guys take. And you know, we've worked with a lot of painters over the years, and like not everyone is that careful or cautious or we're just like thoughtful about executing things. And like, you know, everyone on your team was like was really, you know, like easy to interact with, and you know that always is like a huge plus. So it's been a great collaboration, and yeah, I'm excited. You know, we're sort of like getting near the finish line, so that means, you know, we'll be able to get everything photographed and start sharing those images, which would be really exciting. I'd love to share those with your Insta following and ours as well.
Yeah, I saw that one story you put up, and I was like, oh my god, this is gonna be so cool.
Yeah, we're doing a lot of fun stuff there. And I think like one of the things that I'm doing in that project, which is something that I really love to do, is to sort of to find a way to just like throw a whole bunch of things together in a room that don't necessarily feel like they go together, but then when you step back it's like, oh wow, they do. Like you know, each item is a different color, like nothing is matching, things just kind of like coordinate or kind of speak together, or sort of like, you know, you kind of use, you know, like I think in their living room is a really great example where we have like a brown sofa and we have a green sofa and we have these like colorful chairs that are like pink and light blue, and there's a purple ottoman. And like, you know, it sounds like as I'm even describing it and hearing myself describe it, it sounds awful, but like somehow like, but somehow when it all goes together, like somehow there's some kind of harmony there. And so that's definitely one of the things I really love to do in creating a space, and it's been a fun thing I've been doing on our project here too.
Yeah, it's cool to be able to walk into a space and be like, I can tell a professional designer did this. Like this is on another level than, it's like with our paint jobs. Like clearly someone knows what they were doing who did this. In a world where we're pretty used to walking into rooms that didn't have a high level designer, like because yeah, if you see a brown couch and a green couch, a layperson would never do that.
Right. Yeah.
When someone with your eye that understands all of the parameters goes at it, then it can be part of a bigger picture, and it all makes sense. And that's what when I try to encourage clients to call a designer, that's always what I say. It's like they will give you the courage to maybe take some risks that you might want to but not feel comfortable doing alone.
Mm-hmm.
And B, they speak the language. They'll know how like it just looks better.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And and I think, and these guys that we're working with, and I think that we're really fortunate that we work with a lot of really nice people who really appreciate what we do. And so, just putting out a lot of good energy, and fortunately that seems to be coming back our way as well. And that's a big and important part of the job for us as well.
Who is us? What does your team look like?
So the main partners in the business are myself and Tom Egan. He focuses more on like the big picture, the architecture, the sort of like massing of projects, because we do everything from like foundations to fabrics. So, right now we have like a ground up construction house that we're working on in Little Compton, Rhode Island. And, we don't get to do a lot of new construction homes because, so much in the New England area, which is primarily where we do most of our work, is already so built up that a lot of times we're just, renovating, doing additions, stuff like that, sort of like reconfiguring spaces that maybe have been poorly renovated in the past. And, the best result in any of our renovations is we want the spaces to feel like maybe they had always been that way. And so when people come in, this just like feels very natural. And I think, even people that aren't really savvy to design, I think we've all kind of walked through houses with like unusual layouts, and you're just kind of like, I don't know if it's the energy or the flow or just like feels off. And, when you're in a layout that makes sense, it's sort of like, just feels like there's like more of an ease to it. And so one of the things that we try to do is like, we're often we'll have people come to us and they'll think they need an addition. And then we look at their space and we're like, well, you have this big house, but I think it's just maybe not being utilized as well as it could be. And so a lot of times we'll actually end up avoiding adding onto a house, but it's more just about reconfiguring the space that they have, but in a way that really makes spaces multi-use and kind of maximizes them.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And one of the other things we try to do is like, working in and around the city, we work in a lot of smaller spaces. And so we always are trying to apply the principles of the architecture and layouts that you'd see in grander homes, but on a smaller scale. Like, and even in the smallest apartment, it's great to be able to step into a little vestibule and not swing the door open and be looking at the living room sofa. And so, like, how do you create that same rhythm and that you might have in a much bigger home, but just in a smaller space? And we find that even in more contemporary spaces, like, you find the principles of classical architecture and kind of follow those for just like laying spaces out, then it really kind of creates this opportunity for spaces even that are very small to feel very elegant and feel very natural.
So there's Tom and there's you.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Rebecca is another one of our senior designers, and she heads up some other projects as well. And then we have a couple of full-time people on our team. There's Alina and Trisha, and they really help and support us in any way we need, sort of like on the administrative side and scheduling and doing some project management and like helping to oversee deliveries and installs and stuff like that. And then we also work with a few architects that we work with on a contracting basis, so that Tom will come up with the concepts and the designs, and then we pair with a There are a few other like architects that we use it for architecture and drafting services to sort of like create the full sets of plans needed for renovation and construction.
Make sure the house doesn't fall down, kind of stuff.
Exactly. Right. On top of my beautiful sofa. I mean, come
Yeah,
on. Yeah. And so that's our structure. We have a little storefront in the south end. It's a little corner space that we kind of have set up. It's kind of like a little living room library set up, and we kind of like have our desk space kind of like worked into that space, so it feels kind of like a space that is designed as a home, so people kind of walking by can get like a little glimpse at the type of work that we do, but then also kind of like functions as our office as well.
that's pretty cool. So
Yeah.
is your house also like awesomely designed then? I would imagine.
I
Or,
mean, I do love my place, and I
dude,
did spend a lot of time designing it. I think it's sort of interesting with so this is the second condo that I've owned, and I think the first condo that I owned, I made some of the mistakes that I try to I try not for my client to have my clients make when I'm working with them, which is like just do a lot of stuff that like looks good. And so when I bought this place, I kind of was like, I'm not putting anything in this place unless I love it. Like the artwork, the details, like how things come together, like the furniture, like I put a lot more thought into it, but I put a lot more me into it. So it kind of like, like I was saying before, it's like as people walk around, they're like, oh, this is interesting. Like, what are these like metal airplanes? I'm like, oh, those are old hood ornaments. And that's like part of this collection that I started and blah, blah. Everything's kind of like there's a little bit of like a story behind it. And the things that when I walk around that make me happy to see, but also are things that I love to share when people are here, because definitely love entertaining. It's not really the high point in the world for entertaining, but but
no.
yeah. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a glimpse of. You can see it's a little shadowy back there, but I've got my big library back there, which is kind of like filled with my home design studio stuff, and then I have this funky like double height area that brings you down to the living room. So it's kind of a very unusual space, and I like fell in love with it because I'd done quite a few projects in the South End, and I kind of felt like I'd done a bunch of expressions of what the South End like townhouse condos could look like. And so when I was looking for this place for a while, and then I saw it, I was like, I fell in love. I mean, it looked like a MTV Real World house when I got it. It was kind of crazy and like all over the place and like totally tacky, but I saw there was something special here. And for me, I kind of saw something that felt a little bit more like you might find like in the West Village in New York or something, or like that. It was kind of a little bit of my inspiration.
That's awesome. So how did you get started in the business that you have today?
So I was at Mass Art and studying art and architecture, and then I started working at the design center. And then while I was there, I met my old boss, and they were looking for someone to come and work for the firm. And so I went and I worked there at this other firm for 8 years, and that's where I met Tom Egan, my business partner that I was mentioning on the architecture side. And we worked together for 8 years, and we really had a lot of great energy together, and we really did a lot of beautiful projects together. And I think learned a lot in that environment together, and it just kind of felt natural to eventually kind of start our own thing. And yeah, it's been working out really well. It's a good relationship because we can really challenge each other, and we really believe in collaboration. Not just collaborating with the clients, but the collaboration between he and I, where like we can push each other. And sometimes it's like 5 minutes before a meeting, and I'll show him something or he'll show me something, and I'll be like, I don't think that's great for like X reason. And like, of course, it's the last thing you want to hear, like right before you're about to go into a meeting, where it's like, where it's sort of like what you drew doesn't work. But sometimes like you need to hear it, and sometimes you need to like scramble and fix those things so that like ultimately, like whatever we're presenting is going to be the best for the client. Or sometimes it's like, with anything, there'll be a layout they're about to present, and it's like, ooh, you forgot to push the washer dryer closet in there. So like, so it's like good because it's, checks and balances a lot of times. And we can make sure that we're kind of like staying on our A game. And also I think, it's great. Like for me, like, when we are diving into like the interior detailing and like the decoration piece of it, I'll kind of like take the lead, and sometimes, I'll be running along on a project, um, on my own, and just like meeting with clients on my own, and then we'll kind of get to a point where we're most of the way there, and I'm sort of feeling like, okay, like, we're kind of, there's like an additional like, final 10% we need to do to really kind of knock this out of the park. And it's usually at that time, um, when Tom will come back in, and he'll be able to like offer some fresh perspective, like, what would actually be great is if we added in this, or like, I think you need a little bit more of this. And so it's like a good way to kind of like get another like bigger picture perspective. And then I'm like, okay, yep, no, I'm totally into that. And then I can kind of run with that and kind of like finish up on the decoration side.
Yeah, I'm jealous. Oftentimes I wish I've had a business partner, just like you said, to give you that perspective, to be able to bounce things off of. And it's really hard. I mean, it's cool that you found a business partner that you can make it work, because it's, you don't hear generally a lot of great stories about it. So do you think you guys, so do you think you learned a lot I'm assuming you learned a lot working for some other company first,
Yes, definitely.
and that way you got to make all your mistakes on someone else's uh,
Yeah,
umbrella?
sometimes it was watching them make the mistakes, to be honest. And yeah, I think that sort of like informed a lot of how we wanted to like build the foundation of our company, and what the focus was going to be was kind of like seeing what we didn't think was ideal in this other scenario. Like in the firm we used to work for, we worked for a super talented guy. But we saw some opportunities for us to sort of like expand and grow, and kind of make things work a little bit better, and maybe avoid some of the hiccups along the way, that some of the challenges that we kind of saw expressed happening in that company. And so that really kind of laid the foundation for a really clear focus about what we wanted to achieve. And I think we always wanted to, like, more than anything, just like create beautiful spaces. Like, we're not like super money focused. Like, we're just like, at the end of the day, like, if a project's not a right fit, like, we don't care what the budget is. Like, it has to be like a good connection between us and the clients, because it's a long relationship. It's not unusual for a project to be 2 years, and we're often doing multiple projects for clients, as they sell and buy new places, or have multiple homes or whatnot. And so it's and one relationship that's not a good fit can really be draining, when you kind of like have someone that there's a misalignment, and you don't really have like a good connection with. And you can get off the like one really tough phone call, and then you don't want to do any more work for the rest of the day. It kind of like sucks all the creative energy out of you. And so very early on, we decided that, like, we know what our focus is. We want to work with really nice people. We want to create really beautiful spaces. Like, neither of us are really like fancy guys, but we create like really beautiful homes together. And like, and we also try to be like really approachable, and not snobbish at all. Like we don't really come to the table with any of that energy. And it's just about like working together with really nice people to create something really special.
I don't think it's a coincidence that you've been so successful with what you said earlier, where you said you started it with a very clear vision of what you wanted it to be. And I people, contractors and guys will ask me all the time, like, how did you start? what was it like? And I have a similar story where, you know, you work for other contractors and you see all the things, you're like, I would do that different. I would do this differently. And eventually I got my skill set up where I thought I was as good as my boss. And I thought I was a bunch of things I could do better than him. And then when you start a company with a clear vision of what am I going to go do now, and don't just like not passively let the world, oh, someone called me, they want me to design their interior, and
Yeah.
like whoever calls, like you just get pushed by the winds. When you have that clear focus, that's what I try to have in my company, is a very clear focus on what do we do and who do we do it for and why, and then everything kind of lines up. So it was cool. I liked hearing you say you had a very clear focus. Was that something that you learned from your last company, of taking on clients that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think all of the relationships ended on a positive note. And, that's not something that we wanted to happen in our company. And like, and I think a big part of that is, finding the right people to work with from the get-go, and really kind of like trusting your instincts. There'll be times when there've been like multiple times when we've walked through really like projects that had really healthy budgets, and they definitely wanted to create something special together, but there was something that just felt off. And like sometimes it's sort of like, we'll step out of this space and we'll drive away, and I'll be like, I'm not sure about this, and then Tom will be like, yeah, I don't think so either. And then oftentimes after that, there'll be like some like confirming moment where we're like, ooh, yeah, we made the right decision. And so, I mean, I think that's a big part of it, because I think like if you're starting, if there's always going to be challenges, there's always going to be hurdles, there's always going to be like issues that come up on every project. But just being able to like, like respond to those like honestly and openly, to get them resolved, and like get through those challenging moments. And we have like, even with our nicest clients, we have what's called getting freaky, which is like sometimes the nicest people, like you get to a certain point in a project where it's like they've spent all this money and like all this time and energy has been put into it, and you're kind of like towards the end, but stuff's not quite coming together. And it like sometimes at that moment, like even the nicest people can start to just feel like frazzled and stressed, and like maybe just like drained, or they're just like challenged by like living in a construction zone for 9 months or whatever it is. And so it's like being able to sort of like navigate that with people, and like, and sort of like, assuring people that we're on course, and like in a couple of weeks, like things are going to be radically different than where we are. And I think working with the right people that that can understand that, and also going through our like design shrink moments, which kind of like happen navigating the dynamics of working with couples all the time. It's sort of like, the challenges, with good people, and everyone like focus on the same thing at the end of the day. Like you can always get there. There's always a path, and there are going to be stressful moments, and that's just like part of the experience. But we're all moving towards the same place, and you can kind of like, without a lot of unnecessary stress, like kind of get back on track and get focused and kind of feel reassured and whatnot.
Yeah, and if you're working with a difficult client, start when you get down in that trough of the pain, it's way deeper, and
Yes.
often you don't have any way to like go back to level. And
Right.
like, level, and let's talk about this with clear heads. And like, well, if that wasn't there when things were great, I'm so envious to hear you say that, because it's taken me so long to learn that. Like for you, like you were saying, like the big budget at the other side of these red flags. Like I'd talk about like the shiny, unbelievable scope of work on the other side of the red flags that makes you like ignore them through the red flags because
Yeah.
you want to do that awesome project.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's one thing I could do differently looking back, it's learn that faster and say no to a few more projects where there was red flags and I didn't listen, or like you said, you could feel it. Like I have to train my body now and I've trained my body to feel the, like, this doesn't feel right. Something about what they said, or something about the way they're approaching this, or like I'm already feeling this, and we haven't done any business.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, I was just excited that somebody was calling me to paint something. So it was like, man, that must just, like, you don't even know that that's a thing you should be paying attention to. And then you make a few mistakes, and it starts to be like, well, what could I have done different? And
Yeah.
sometimes the answer is just not have done business with that person.
So
So
do you feel like that you do turn down some projects at this point? Have you gotten to a point in your career where you are trusting your instincts on that sort of thing?
finally, yes. Yes, like, I'm not trying to, like, even this morning, I delivered samples to a client. I'm pretty sure we have a project. It's an amazing project. But I delivered the sample, and they're like, so what's the timeline on this? And are we, like, I'm very concerned about timeline. And I said it's like 6 to 7 weeks probably. Well, that's gonna put us after Thanksgiving. And there's a huge part of me that wants to be like, no, we'll get it done for Thanksgiving. I promise. Like,
Mm,
if that's what it takes to get the job, we'll get it done for Thanksgiving. But that's a completely irrational and not very reasonable thing for me to say at this point, because there's a 10% chance to get it done before Thanksgiving.
wow. Yeah.
But in the past, I would have, like, in that conversation, rather than just sitting in the uncomfortable moment of, like, no, this is the timeline, and just, like, sitting in that, I would have in that time gotten uncomfortable and backtracked on everything that I came in that meeting to say, and walked out promising the world, and I wouldn't have been able to deliver.
Mm.
That happened a few too many times in my career. Uh,
Well,
and
we're people pleasers. That you just try to make everybody happy. You want to try to challenge yourself. Also, I think that's probably part of it. Like we kind of thrive with the challenge. Like if somebody gives us a deadline, we're like, all right, let's do this. Let's make it happen. Like I've got like a graduation and I want to host or whatever it is, or just like any deadline that people make up. It's kind of like it's kind of fun and exciting and like when you can get to that point. And so, but then it's the other side is like where you're saying where you're like, that's not really achievable. And so like it's that like overcommitment factor that kind of ends up weighing you down in the end.
yeah, it actually, in Monday, I said the same thing to a client. I was like, we can't do this year. And, like, sat in the silence and watched them be uncomfortable and watch the frustration. And, but it's like it's a fact. We can't. And so, I'm learning to stand my ground when I go into a meeting and I know what parameters are. I know what the facts are, and not let people change that because I want to make them happy. I'm in a business where that's what we do. We make people happy. We paint beautiful spaces. You create beautiful spaces. I want people to be happy, but it's way more important that they're happy at the end of the project than before we get into the project.
Yes, 100%. I think one of the challenges we're kind of dealing with right now is that, we've had a couple people approach us and say, okay, we're about to buy this place. We want to hit the ground running. Like, how long will it take to come up with drawings? And we'd be like, okay, this will take us this amount of time. And then one of the things we have to say is like, we just have to be realistic about the fact that it will probably take us 3 to 4 weeks to get numbers back from a contractor. Even if we get them lined up right now and kind of like walk them through, and they're going to need to see a plan. We need to create that plan. It doesn't exist yet. We need to give it to them. And just like every contractor is so busy that, and I think everyone's getting so much stuff thrown at them that and the pricing is probably like the least fun part of any project for a contractor, that even as like motivated and focused as we are, is like, yeah, like having to like say that to a client and be in that moment where you're like, this is the reality. We don't have, like, even in our closest relationships with like big contracting companies, you know that to like, I can't over commit for them, and they have to be like open and honest and kind of like sit in that awkwardness and that uncomfortable feeling, which, like, you're right, no one wants to be there. Everyone just wants to like say the thing that makes people happy. But I think you're right. I think it's like as we go along in our careers, like those are the things that we learn to do that ultimately help everyone to be happy, help us to be happy, but ultimately help the client be happy at the end of the project because you're meeting or exceeding their expectations.
It's also the professional thing to do, like, to be honest. And, you know, can that client, if they called, I said, be careful. If you can call somebody right now and they can get this exterior done before the end of the season, do lots and lots of homework on them, because I don't know of a reputable company that could just like drop everything at the end of the season right now and get this exterior done.
Yeah.
But there are plenty of guys who will promise the world in that moment. And I think just being a professional is taking your experience and knowledge of, I've dealt with enough GCs to know that it's going to take 3 to 4 weeks to get the pricing, and to just say that. And we all know there's some clients who don't want to hear what they don't want to hear. And they'll go, well, I'll find someone that will do it. And it used to be like, well, no, come back. Like, let me rethink this. And now it's like, no, I'm trying to build up the demand and on one side so I can not need that project. You know, the first time when I first started, I just needed someone to pay me to paint something.
Mm-hmm.
So I built the demand up, and now I just need to like stick to my guns. Like, I know this is the truth. Like, just do it. And remember all the painful times. And hopefully, and that makes it easier. You know, today it was easier to say that because I've had enough of those times where you can't deliver on what you said we're going to do timeline-wise, and everyone's upset.
Yeah, no one wants to be there. That's for sure. So one of the things I am like super impressed with, in addition to your like painting skill set, is you were just like an Instagram master, and you know you're like doing the stories where you're showing what you're doing, and you're like posting pictures of your work, and you have this like show you're doing weekly, and I am like occasionally posting a picture. And so I mean I'm like continually like challenged by Instagram because it's not something I like naturally fall in line with. But you know, when I see what you do, I am really impressed that you just are like somehow are able to just like make it part of your routine where like you're just thinking to do it. Like I don't know how many times I've been like, why didn't I like take a picture like of this photo shoot happening? Like everyone loves that stuff. Like people always like, oh, you know, like you get a lot of comments and stuff like that. But I'm always like afterwards like, ooh, that would have been good. But I guess it's like what is it? Just like get like starting the practice, like getting into the habit. Like how did you get going with that?
Yeah, so my wife started my account, and I wanted nothing to do with it. And I social media, and I'm not a fan of it necessarily for personal use,
Mm-hmm.
but for business, I'm a huge advocate, obviously. And so I just started. I think it almost started a game. It was like in the very beginning, it was like, how can I get a few more likes? How can I get a few more followers? And so it was just like, oh, well, the answer is put out better content more regularly. And magically, that's the answer to social media is, you know, show up more often and have. So then it turns into revenue for the company, and then so like there was just like little bits of reinforcement along the way,
Mm-hmm.
to the point where, like, I always tell anyone it's good at what we do. Like I'm the real deal. You're the real deal. Like, it would be awesome if our clients just got to follow us around all day ahead of time. Like nothing sells my company more than just like watching us work and seeing what it's like of our project. So that's how I look at it now is Instagram is here for me to document what I'm already doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I try to just like, it's become second nature. Like I've had a story up for like, I don't know, probably almost a year now straight. Like there's always something on my story. And I made that a goal where I don't want to see that little plus symbol next to my name in the corner of stories where I don't have one right now. And so it became just like, all right, well, today I need to do something. So whether I turn the camera around and I show what's happened on a site, but if I'm in the office today, I will repost one of my guys' posts, or I'll repost the Daily Stoic and some sentence they said that was relevant to my life. And I prioritize it as my marketing. And yeah, I think it's a muscle. it's hard and requires lots of effort at first. But now, I mean, now it's like I don't think of it. Like,
Yeah, it seems like it's pretty effortless for you at this point.
and the first ones you make, where you turn that camera around and you talk, I deleted probably 30 of them. You know,
Right.
words, you know, oh, that wasn't right. I honestly, I don't think I go back and watch any of them. If you watch a lot of my stories, I'm like out of breath. I'll burp in it, or like, you know, I'm just like, I just turn the camera on
Yeah.
and I document. Like right before I leave a job, I'll talk to the guys. Hey, one sec, guys, I'm gonna make a story. It takes 1 minute. I post it. It takes 2 minutes out of my day.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good point because, like, you know, I think that, yeah, like we're like likable guys. Like, I think people are intimidated by our industry. That either like designers are going to like come in and be like oh, like all of your stuff is awful, like, you know, like, or just come in and just like have a lot of attitude, or like try to get you to spend money you don't want. I mean, you probably like experienced it as well, where people like where you walk into a job site and where people are sort of like sometimes like intimidated to tell you everything they want you to do, because they first want to ease in a little bit and see like if they actually like you and want to work with you. And once they do, it's kind of like, okay, well, actually, we don't want to just do this. Like we'd like to do like the whole house or whatever it is. But I think you're right. It's sort of like just like putting yourself in front of the camera. It's like that is like such a good marketing tool, because I think there probably are a lot of people that just like to see what you're up to. Like, you know, I'm often on different projects doing different things most days, and so yeah, it's just a matter of like, if I can just get it on camera somehow, if I could just get in front of that camera.
Stories, just go. I'm gonna make a story every day this month, every working day. Like, I'm gonna make a story, and because people, what you do especially, like, people will follow. Like, there's lots of people work at a cubicle, or they're sitting at their desk, and they don't get to work with their hands the way I do, or make beautiful spaces like you do. So it's entertainment to watch what you're up to. Never mind educational. So if I can watch like the beginning stages of your project, and then throughout the course of a year, I'm paying attention and I'm seeing the next step and the next step and the next step, that's like a awesome long form movie that's like real.
Yeah.
And what I found is then people are like, they feel like they know Josh, and they feel like they'll meet you in real life the first time, and there's this connection that we feel towards someone we've seen on a screen for a lot of time, that they just feel more connected to you. So then they might be at the dinner party and someone's talking about design, and they're like, oh, I follow this guy Josh, let me tell you about this story, he's on this project, and they'll know as much about the project as you do, because you've been like very quick little snippets of the breakdown, but it keeps their attention. And, we all want to envision having these beautiful spaces that you create. So I think you're in a great position to be able to just like, even if you start doing them and deleting them first,
Sure,
which I did for a while, eventually like it'll be weird, and 13 people will watch them, but they go away in 24 hours. But little by little, you'll get your groove of voice. Just whoever you like. My personality, I hope, comes through my stories and through my posts, because I'm not trying to edit them for social media. I'm just trying to document what I am, and what we're doing, because that's what wins, right? Like, we're good at what we do, so we just need people to see that.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like, don't overthink it. Just like make a little snippet of like whatever's going on that day, and then just like put it out there, and then let it disappear and never see it again if you don't want to.
Yeah, I don't watch my own stuff usually. Yeah,
that's probably wise.
I don't want to see that. I don't want to watch this podcast after and see my face.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to add value to the world and give, like Gary V. So much of Gary Vaynerchuk's like his concepts inform what I do. It's just like give all the time. And you know, I'm a big believer in the more value you give to the world, the more you'll be able to extract back.
Hmm.
You know? So and it becomes kind of fun, you know, like 6 months in, like it's work first, but it does become fun now where, you know, I'm proud to show off what we're doing. So it's like, if nothing else, look what we're up to, guys.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but then we don't want to do it in a braggy way. We want to do it in like a documentary, like educational.
Sure. Yeah,
So,
as we're just trying to like share education or share interesting moments with people, like getting that out there. I think it's also like the thing that I struggle with our Instagram account is that, you know, our Instagram account, it's hard to see us in our Instagram account because it's just pretty pictures. And there's so many Instagram accounts that are pretty pictures, and a lot of them aren't the people who are making those you know, beautiful spaces. It's just like reposting. And so, you know, so I do think it's a really important thing to put out there, but it's just something that I haven't been able to sort of like to totally jump into. And so I was excited to do this because this is like totally out of my comfort zone. And also like, you know, like I was really interested to kind of like lean in on you a little bit to talk to you a little bit about like how did you get here, and like hearing you say that when you started doing this you wanted nothing to do with it, and like like I loved hearing that. That's like, okay, that's where I am right now. And if you can be where you are and you know, starting from this place, then yeah, I think there's something about that that makes the barrier to entry feel a little bit lower. You know what I mean? Like you don't have to be this like person that's really naturally drawn to be on the camera and share and create stories and whatnot. It's just sort of like you said, developing like a muscle for it.
yeah, I think, you know, a lot of people will talk to me like, well, we don't, like, they'll say, well, I don't have what you have. Like, you don't have the personality or whatever it is. And I'm like, dude, everyone has a personality amongst their family and friends, right? We all have our own thing amongst our family and friends. And I can assure you, my first stories was not a very good depiction of me. I was probably like, you know,
Kind of
but
stiff.
over time, the camera is like being in my living room with my family, you know, and that's what takes the time. So yeah, what people see now is I'm completely comfortable being just 100% me in front of a camera. But I mean, that was never how it was for quite a while.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think anybody can do it.
Hmm.
I think it's also, I would love if designers, like, if you were to give me, like, when you show the pretty picture, it's awesome. But if you gave me like paragraphs of like what the client you with, like, what was the challenge of the project? Like, here were the parameters we were given. And like, give me the story behind the picture I see. I think that does so much better. It gives me context. You know, I posted that picture of a gloss ceiling that we just did, and to painters looked at it and were like, some of them kind of get it, and most people don't. Like, it's too confusing. And that was not an awesome post because I didn't clearly define what you were seeing in the picture. And that's an extreme example, but I think all of your projects have awesome, unique clients with unique desires and parameters to fit this project into. That could be a quick, like, 3-paragraph description, even 4, of what went into that, like, pretty picture at the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Another one of my challenges, because I'm all about like images and colors and pictures, they'd be like, words, like not words. I think would be more likely to be able to speak words in front of a camera than to really like type out
Okay.
words. So like, that is my challenge, is like get in front of the camera, like start talking in front of the camera. I think that feels more me than sort of actually, because yeah.
Almost have somebody in the office, like behind the scenes, write the captions for your photos, because I'm sure everyone in the company knows the background to that project. So somebody else could write the caption, but
Yeah.
because I think that a lot of with what we do with Instagram is we're speaking to different people. Like, some people want to read the caption and don't care to watch a video. Some people want to watch a video and don't want to read a caption. So I got to give them both so I can, talk to everyone. So there are some people who are going to want to see what Evolve Residential, what is their process? How do they think about, how do they get to there? If I come to them with this, what's their reaction going to be? And how would that experience kind of go? People do their homework. Like, people will read, a potential client that's looking at will read every single one of your descriptions. They really will. I've been shocked at how much my clients who find me on social media have done their homework on my feed, and they know what we do. So even if you got somebody else to do it, I would love to see some designer or architect, like, because we know that somebody came to you with some story. Like, yep. Here's the goal, here's what I wanted, here's what my parameters are. And then, so you took like these like pieces and then you made this beautiful thing happen. There's a big story in there that tells me a lot about your company and how you work and how you think.
Yeah, in the process. Yeah, I see Ian has noted that people love before and after pictures, which I think is really true, and I don't think is something that we show enough of. And I think that's another way to really like personalize. Like, I think that's the biggest struggle for me is where I just feel like there's nothing that is really telling people that when they're looking at these images, they are Evolve Residential's images. Like you're right. I have to get that story in there. I have to like get the process in there, whether that's like talking in front of the camera or like, writing something about what was the challenge, what were the goals, what was like the vision, like, or where do we start with the before picture. Like, I think, yeah, those are all like really helpful kind of things to focus on.
Process. 95% of my posts are process. That's what makes us special. Like, what makes you special is that process dealing with the potential. The outcome is awesome, but it's all the things that happen to achieve the outcome that don't show through in a picture. So, I think a lot of, like, I was teaching a social media class this weekend to a bunch of painters, and like, let's stop being so vanilla and so much social media seems very distant, right? It's like there's this like it's cold and it doesn't. It's not a documentary of you. It's more of like it's a website at that point. It's just like, oh, here's pretty pictures. Everybody has them, but the people who win, I think, are the ones who really put who they are into their social media. And I tell everyone, like, the goal is, if I'm a potential client, if I look at your feed, or I've been following your feed for 6 months, and I go to tell a friend about you, hopefully your 2 or 3 competitive advantages, the things that make you special, hopefully I can articulate those to a friend based off of what I'm seeing here.
Yeah, and how to get that information out there. Yeah, I think you're right. I think like these pages can often feel so sterile. Like, it might as well be a website. It's kind of interesting to see the evolution. Like first it was like the website, and then it was Instagram, which was all about like, highly curated moments and like creating all this perfection. And I think you kind of like see the other extreme of that with TikTok, which TikTok is about like, people talking about their struggles and anxiety and fears and like, and also just being silly and just being like, not being like too fussy about every single image. And I think it's kind of, you kind of see that like breakdown of barriers. And I think that's probably why so many people are into TikTok, because you can see so much of that. Like, a lot of these moments that are just either playful or silly or just like very real. And I think stories on Instagram have sort of like started to head in that direction more and more as a result of that also.
The one problem with the stories, though, are they're for the people who follow you already. And that's great. That's how I feed my audience. I give them an insight into what I'm doing. But I'm much more focused on my like potential customers and potential clients. And if they were going to do homework on me, what would they see? And that comes from the feed, right? They were going to see 1 day's worth of stories. And some of them, to be fair, will watch you for a while. But I want to go to your bio and your feed, right? Go right to Evolve Residential. And I want to, like, in 10 seconds, be able to clearly communicate to somebody else what makes you guys special.
Well, I can tell you this much. You can't do that right now. So I know what my working orders are.
So that's the fun thing. So that's what we did this weekend is we made blueprints for people. Because I think you have to do this consciously. You have to sit down with pen and paper and write this stuff out. What are the things that make us special? What are our 2 or 3 competitive advantages why would you hire Evolve versus somebody else? That has to be at the top of the page, right? That is what we're trying to get social media to say to people. So now we come down and we go, well, what are the different ways that I could communicate those things through posts? So before and afters is one awesome one. Process, you could even get into commenting on other people's feeds, other people's stuff if you want. There are some bigger accounts that don't post their own stuff always. I wouldn't recommend that, but like that is a way that you could then like put your editorializing of what you see there in. But there, like that you're a creator. Sit down and like, how can I creatively demonstrate my core values and my competitive advantages on social media? That's what our social media pages should be, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that makes a lot of sense because I think a lot of people are intimidated to hire a designer. And I think if people can see that we're fun and friendly people and, that's what you see first, that kind of will like lower people's sort of like anxiety around it in general and kind of takes like I would love for the intimidation factor not to be there at all. And I think a lot of times you will walk into a project and they're like, oh, just so you know, there are like a few pieces that we want to keep that have sentimental value. I hope that's okay. And it's like, of course, like they're like, we want those front and center. Like that needs to be part of what your space is made up. And that's the part that's probably like, again, is that like something special to you and you need those things that are special to you around the space. And so, yeah, like I think that the interior design world, there's just like a lot of nebulous out there. And I think a lot of what you see on like HGTV and whatnot is not at all like what you get when you hire a designer. I always say that, it couldn't be more different because like HGTV is like doing a renovation in a tiny amount of time with a little tiny bit of money. And like what we do is we do these like 2-year projects and we like, maybe spend a fortune or we're like whatever. So it's sort of like 2 very different animals. And I think people just I think the sort of like cliched image of a designer is like someone that's going to like walk into your space and just be like, oh my God, like how dreadful, like get the dynamite. And so, and I don't think like that's like the last thing I want anyone to feel like when I walk into their house. Like I hate it when people are intimidated to have me over to their house, like not as a designer because they're like, oh, you're probably like judging everything. And it was like, honestly, until you ask me, I'm not even gonna look. Like until you say, what would you do with X? Like I'm literally like not even thinking about it. Like it's like I'm not like on and or I'm just not that person, I'm just fun and friendly guy and that first. And hopefully finding ways to get my talent out there more and more.
Awesome. So how do coatings, and now this is a somewhat of a painting podcast, not totally though. It's just about the architecture world, but what are like, so we did some pretty cool Holland oil satin brush finish on this. Like how deep do you get into the coatings when you're getting into paint stuff or what does that look like for you guys?
You mean like, is your question about the application or about the finish? Like
I guess like you, I'm not sure what I'm getting at.
Well, I can tell you this much. I will often specify a satin finish because I know that a less skilled painter can do more with it. And I think that's just kind of like a very honest reality of like working with a lot of different painters over the years. And not everyone, like I've said, like not everyone is like thoughtfully and carefully executing this stuff. And like and also it's kind of like in an older house, like you specify a higher sheen finish and you see like every mistake that's happened over the last 100 years. And so I think like my default is to like go with the satin finish because it's a safer finish. I also like the finish, and I think as long as there's a change in sheen from wall to trim, then you're still going to have that layer of elegance. I sort of like have this like like my very good friends, they have a pretty popular Instagram page, Renovation Husbands, and they are like super into matte finish on the walls. They're like, eggshell is trash, and I'm a huge fan of eggshell. And I because like I respect them, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna try matte finish on the walls. But Renovation Husbands, if you're watching, I'm back to eggshell. So that's where I am. Eggshell on the walls, um, and satin on the trim. I will often just do a matte ceiling, but you'll almost never find a white ceiling in any of our projects. Like even if it's a white room, like a little hint of pink or a little hint of blue is like really awesome up there, and a little bit of a surprise. And it's something that you're not going to necessarily always do a color that like catches your eye immediately, but it's the sort of thing where you're like sitting in a room and maybe having a glass of wine, and you look up and you're like, "Is your ceiling pink?" And they're like, "Well, yes, it is pink." So, but yeah, but it is nice to be able to like when I am working with more talented painters like you guys to feel like, well, what can we actually do? Like, what do I actually want to do? Like, what's the ideal finish I'd like to achieve? And like, it's like awesome to like have the opportunity to work with Fine Paints of Europe because I just love their products so much, and it's a tricky product. It's a tricky product. I think, one of we've tried to do the high gloss walls a few times on projects, and we never totally got there, and so we kind of stopped trying. But guess what, Zach? I've always wanted to do that.
We got you.
And I think we have the team for it now, because that one seemed to be a challenge.
Yeah, that's the hardest thing in painting, especially when you add the colors. But we just finished. Our gloss game is so. I mean, we're at the top of our game right now. We've just completed 2 ceilings in the last week that are, I mean, I couldn't be more proud of. We've done a lot of gloss in the last 6 months.
Awesome.
Brushed, finished, and sprayed, and we can achieve both of those aesthetics. We're doing one now with like really pretty brush strokes in satin to look traditional, like European style trim. The holdings in this house, and they want it to look old. So we had to make lots of samples to get enough brush stroke for the architect to be happy.
Mm-hmm.
So we can play with all that stuff. But I think back to what you said about eggshell and matte and satin. So I want to clear this up, and I think you're going to like this because it'll make your life easier. Those terms are subjective terms, and every paint company has a different idea of what that means. But there's a scale of gloss that's universal that you can, like when we do kitchen cabinet, like most cabinet finishes are going to come and they're not going to call it anything but, is it a 5 sheen, a 10 sheen, 30 sheen, 80 sheen? So the gloss we use is a 98 sheen. It's as high as gloss as you can get. And a flat would be like a 0. And so the level of the degrees gloss, they're called gloss units. Every paint company, you can look up Benjamin Moore Advanced Satin, and it'll tell you in the spec sheet how many degrees of sheen. And if you looked up Advanced Satin against Holland Lac Satin versus like Sherwin-Williams trim paint satin, they all three have 3 different degrees of sheen. So, and the same thing is true, like eggshell versus matte. It is subjective. So different companies, one company might have a matte finish that has the same degrees of sheen as another company's eggshell finish. So I find it's just so much easier to talk about sheen as far as degrees of sheen. Or if you get down to like, I know the product I really like, then you can, it's easier to say the matte. But oftentimes we have clients that get that stuff mixed up because different satins are not all the same, and different mattes company to company are not all the same.
Yeah, no, that's actually really interesting. I've never actually looked at those. I mean, I'm aware that they vary from company to company. I tend to kind of like I've operated almost entirely in the Benjamin Moore and then occasionally fine paints of Europe sheen world. The only other one that I played around with is Farrow and Ball, and that's one where their lower sheen I think is really interesting because I think it's because of the higher pigment of the paint, which kind of creates something special. But I've never looked at the sheen percentages, and I think, yeah, this is like a new conversation for me. Even as a designer, with all these years of experience.
That's my job, is to give you more tools in your toolbox, right? Yeah. You're the creative. I'm the executor. I like being able to give you more tools to work with and a clearer sense of what they are. So I'm going to get you some Eurolux matte, the Fine Paints of Europe matte wall paint.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to get some samples for you. And when you see that paint, I think because I would consider it almost like an eggshell. Like, depends on what you're thinking, but it has some sheen to it.
Yeah.
But that paint is on another level for walls. They have a flat as well that is amazing and is super washable and is like, it's really paint that happens to be flat. It's not just like a bunch of clay in a gallon.
Right.
The Fine Paints line of paints is something Farrow and Ball is a very good marketing company. The quality of the paint in their gallons is definitely subpar. We try to always convince clients to go with Fine Paints in Farrow and Ball color, but the paint itself, it's not super awesome.
Wow. Okay. I haven't heard that feedback out either, but I think you're right. It is like, it's like presented in a showroom, and they have like this very select, like, specific palettes that's kind of like easy to shop and whatnot. But I didn't know that it was garbage, but now I do.
And you can get your wallpaper with the same color as the paint, and everyone loves that. But right now, I just sent a piece of wallpaper to Vermont to be color matched to Fine Paints of Europe gloss. And so we're going to do gloss on the trim, and it's going to be the same navy that's like in this wallpaper. So that's always like, Farrow and Ball sells that pretty heavily. Like, look, you can get Farrow and Ball wallpaper with the same color. But there are ways around it. And as a painter, I don't see a reason to use Farrow and Ball paint. It's not a good value in the market. It's a very well marketed paint, though.
Yeah, that's good to know. Yeah. So
yeah,
I'll use the Fandex to pick the colors, but maybe just stop there.
Yes. And because there's just so many, this is where I like working with pros, because you come to us like, here's what I want it to be, and now we can design a paint spec. That's why we like to get in earlier in the process, so that we can help design the paint spec to achieve the results that you're going for, and not just be like, well, the paint, like the kind of paints, whatever, it's the color that matters. I think that you've seen with that project, like, it's kind of both. Like, the level and the quality of the paint combined with the color adds a feeling to the room. So like the Fine Paints wall paint in matte, it's pure paint, and it has really finely ground pigment, and it has no filler. So it's not a porous substrate. It's not a porous surface when we put it on the wall. All the domestic paint is it's cheaper because they add fillers, and the fillers add porosity, so the light dies in the paint because of the pores. So if I painted a room color with Fine Paints wall paint, as I did with Benjamin Moore wall paint, one room would glow that color a little bit more. Same sheen, same color, same everything, but the light reflectivity is going to be better. So those are the kinds of things that, like, it's a subtle change in in the gallon, but the feeling of the room can be altered.
Yeah, I love that. I also love this idea of like, like bringing you onto a project sooner and really like maximizing your skill set to sort of like, like takes things up even another level, another step of refinement. So yeah, I'd love to like have that process with you on an upcoming projects too. Really maximize your skill set.
That's where we're based out of. So I don't know what's going on. Well, maybe we'll talk about the little Compton thing, but that's exciting to be in Rhode Island.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a project out on the point. It's a really special project. And yeah, we just moved our client in a little late. They were hoping to use it for this full summer, but it ended up not. We ended up not getting them in there until August, but they were able to use it a little bit before the season was totally over. So yeah,
that's awesome. All right, so we have 3 questions that we ask everybody at the end of ZK Live. They're somewhat around paint, but we alter them for whatever person is here.
okay.
So the first question I have for you is, what is your favorite piece of design paraphernalia? Like tool, equipment, software, something that helps you do what you do.
So the first thing that comes to mind is the paint fan deck. Like I have these things everywhere. I've got in the office. I've got in this desk, like literally beneath my hand at this moment. I have them like tucked in my car. I have extra ones everywhere. And I think for a lot of times it's like I need it as like a reference point. Like sometimes to see color, I need to see it next to another color that I know. And so like sometimes you're like, well, will this look good with X? Or sometimes it's sort of like I'm kind of like thinking about an interesting combination and be like, I'm kind of picturing this. I think like a pink might look good with this dark green, but it's sort of like, to be able to like pull something out and to like pull out a color that I'm familiar with and like look at it next to that fabric, I think is like a really good reference point for kind of like developing things. And so, yeah, I mean, that's something that I always have around.
That's awesome. And that's what I always tell clients about designers is they have a deep knowledge of color. So when you come to them, they can go, every time you meet with a designer, like, oh, and they just like, you start rattling off colors like from the chart. Then it's like, how could you ever compete? Of course they're going to give you a color palette that looks good together. This is like what they think about all the time. That's a great answer.
Excellent. I passed the first one.
All right. Now we need a DIY tip for people who are trying to like design a living room set or just a DIY home design tip. What's the big mistakes people make? Save us from them.
I think so. I think the biggest issue is that people end up overthinking things. Like the one thing that I think always surprises me or always surprises other people, and they ask me, and they kind of like really challenge me to be like, why does this go with this? And it's not about like this period marries well with this period for this reason. It's like they feel right together. They there's like something that happens when when the right things are placed next to each other. And so like sometimes it's just a matter of like, on a page, like look at a bunch of different items together and just like trust your gut. Like when you see something that works, like there's like an excitement there. Then if you don't try to think about it, but really just try to like, what does it feel like together? If you can allow that to happen, then you're going to get a much better results. And like whatever your first impulse is, always go with that. Like, because and I think people are also like more able to go a little bit more bold, like in those first impulses, like, oh, what I really want to do is X. Like it's so often will happen with clients, they'll be like, well, I was thinking maybe a crazy tropical wallpaper in the powder room, but that'd be, but that's too much, I think. And you'd be like, no, that'd be amazing. You just like need me to come in and say that would be amazing. And they're like, would it be? And be like, yes. And then we're gonna do a pink ceiling with it or whatever it is. And so it's that like in those moments where you sort of like have this impulse, like just go with it. Like the more you overthink it, the more it gets watered down. It happens, with some of our clients that don't, trust in the process as much. And they like, well, let's look at another version of this room. And then can we change this? And can we change this? And like often what ends up happening is like between rounds like 1 and 2 can really be about like refining it to really be more about you. But then when you get into rounds like 3 and 4, and if it gets down to 5, it just starts to all get a little watered down. And so don't overthink it. I mean, that's like my biggest advice. I think it's probably also like the biggest challenge for people to actually do that. But just like go with your gut. Always trust your gut.
That's awesome. That's always the only word I can ever describe like good design is it just feels good. You know, you go into a room and you're like, this, there's, I don't know what, I couldn't put it into words, but this feels right. Or this, like, it's a feeling so much more than it is like yellow goes with purple and black goes like it's not analytical. It's, this feels good.
100%. Yep, for sure.
That's awesome. All right, this is my favorite question. This is everybody's favorite question. You've demonstrated your expertise as a designer. So now we need to like pull you back down to reality with all the regular people. And so we need you to tell us your biggest, most embarrassing mistake you ever made in business. And you can think about it for a sec. We've had some pretty revealing, pretty good ones. So get uncomfortable for us.
um, hmm. I think that I think I've recently made a pretty big mistake on a project, and I think part of it was kind of like allowing myself to like in the sort of like the height of like producing a project in COVID. I think I allowed a little bit of arrogance to take over, to say like, you know what, I can do this totally remotely, and I don't need to, like go and double check X, Y, and Z. And like I can just like create this in my head or in the space or on my computer. But so much of the experience is about being on site, and again, like to really understand what is going to feel right. And on this project, I made a couple mistakes because maybe it was in part that I was a little bit scared to go outside, but I think a bigger part of it was that like I think I was kind of arrogant about it. I think I like was like, I like, oh, this will be great. Like, I don't, I don't need to do as many site visits as I normally would. And we had some problems come up, and the clients were not happy about that because, they were things that I should have caught, and had I gone on site more, um, to double check these things, they wouldn't have happened. And it was like a humbling moment, for the client to like send that email after an install saying like, look, like we've spent a lot of money, and we're really disappointed about X, Y, and Z. And what's
Can you tell us what the XYZ was?
Well, just like a piece of furniture like not fitting through the door is one. It's like,
all right, there we go.
So which basically means we have to like literally like disassemble and like, pay someone to like disassemble, bring it inside, and then reassemble the piece of furniture. And it's just sort of like, I tell you exactly what it was. So on the plans, the opening to the door is 30 inches wide. My piece of furniture was 30 inches wide. But guess what? There's a little piece of the jam that like sticks in, and that makes the door less than 30 inches wide. And so there was no way this piece of furniture was getting in there. And so it was just like, how did I miss this? And it was like, if I had just like gone on site and taken the dimension to double check, which is something I usually do, it wouldn't have happened. And that was just like one of a few little mistakes that kind of happened. But that one was kind of like the most like obvious, like easiest to catch, like had I actually verified on site. And obviously like rebuilding a piece of furniture is like a big expense, but it's one of those things where it's like at the end of the day, like you just need to make the client happy because we're like working towards this goal. They're super nice people. I want them to be happy with what we're doing, with the outcome. Like ultimately, like we are such a referral based business. Like it's just really important at the end of the day that they have a good feeling about us. And sometimes that just means like stepping up and being like, look, we did this. I'm embarrassed. I'm disappointed in myself and my team for not catching X, Y, and Z. this is how we're going to make it right. We're going to do it right away. And like without question, without hesitation, to correct everything and to just make it right no matter what the cost. And then like ultimately, like we have gotten to a good place again. And I think they, their confidence was a little shaken by like these few slip ups, but I think we've gotten back to a place where we are kind of like back where we were before, where I think they are feeling more confident about the experience and about us and about trusting us. But yeah, it really sucks when stuff like that happens, and it's sort of like important to be like, okay, this is why we do this. This is why we double check all of these things, because these things are avoidable, and people are paying us for the expertise so that these things don't happen. And when they do, it's sort of like, why am I spending all this money, guys? Like we can do better. And it's like, yes, we can. And guess what? I am going to do better, and I'm not going to let that mistake happen again.
Totally. And as long as you don't do it twice, right?
Right.
As long as no more couches don't fit in door openings, I mean, at some point we're going to make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Just don't do it twice.
Right. Exactly.
Awesome. Well, Josh, thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Absolutely. It's such a pleasure. I feel like I have some good challenges, coming out of this for myself. I really appreciate your expertise, on the Instagram thing. And also, like I said, I do have a huge respect for what you guys do and your skill set. And I am really excited for our next project together.
Yeah, me too.
All right. Well,
all right.
sir.
Thank you. Have a good.
All right. You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.